There seemed to be incessant pressure mounting on government, especially this week. Today, for instance, there's news of player agitation in the camp of the Black Stars over unpaid allowances. Right here in Ghana, finance workers represented by the Union of Industry and Commerce and, of course, Finance Workers, UNICOF, have resolved to embark on an industrial action next week unless government suspends the proposed implementation of value-added tax on financial services. Also, nurses and midwives are threatening a demonstration of unpaid allowances. Well, chiefs and people of Asogli are also threatening to embark on a demonstration of a government's failure to fix their roads. Well, that's not enough, or that's not all. POTAG is also still on strike, and their grievances remain unresolved. So what could be the problem? We're not just dealing with an issue today, but a plethora of them. This is today's big story. Well, my name is Prince Minka and welcome to the program. Well, we get to talk about the Black Stars and the agitations currently in the camp. But before that, members of the Ghana Union Traders Association have closed their shops in Accra to protest what they describe as unfavorable government policies. Well, the protests, which settled to go on in both Accra and Kumasi, would have to last for 3 days. Listen.
I've lost money. That is why I'm very angry and I'm very sad about that. Government should do something about the dollar because he is charging us for dollar for duties, and we are paying. I used to pay 58 million. Now I'm paying 220 million. So it's triple, and I'm very upset. So if he hurt me, he should do something about the dollar.
What we are doing here, we've lost so much money. It's like every day we are using our money just for the business and nothing is coming in. So I think the government should not take this into a politics matter. This is a serious issue, and this is for us. It's for our children. It's for our home, our life. We need somebody to listen to us deep down, inside, and see what we are going through. We are going through a lot because if you change $20,000 last month to cost you 25,000, today it's more than 300,000. Where is your profit?
Well, just as I told you, we'll be looking at a plethora of issues that has resulted in some sort of incessant pressure currently mounting on the Mahama administration. We'll touch base with the various labor agitations that we've seen so far and exactly what can be done to deal with the situation. And I've told you that POTAG is on strike. Their issues remain unresolved. Today, for instance, they were in court. The outcome of the issues in court will let you know. And then, apart from that, financial workers are also threatening to embark on a strike action over VAT on financial services. We'll be looking at that pretty shortly, and we'll find out from a labor expert, Openyi Obeng, as he joins us on the line, exactly what can be done to remedy the situation and what should be government's posturing at this particular moment, stemming from the fact that there are those who say, look, we're getting tired of the various promises being made by government, and why can't we find a lasting solution to some of these problems that we're seeing in the country as far as the labor front is concerned. We should also be getting some perspective from political scientists, and they will tell us exactly what the core, or what the bane of this situation really is, and we'll get on the phone lines pretty shortly. But like I mentioned to you, midwives, POTAG, and of course Union of Industry and Commerce and Finance Workers, they have threatened to cause a shake on the labor front with strike and demonstration. Can we actually fathom exactly what could be the reason for all this? And with all the pressure on government, exactly how can government deal with the situation? Let's go on the phone lines now and speak to a labor expert. Openyi, good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
Now, like we spoke about earlier on before coming on the air, a wide range of issues hitting the labor front. Nurses and midwives are threatening to go on a strike action. We also have POTAC. Their issue remain unresolved, and they're still on strike. We have a number of agitations on the labor front, especially the UNICOF, for instance. They are also threatening to embark on a demonstration of a sort. Now, with all these plethora of events unfolding on the labor front, what should be the posturing of government in dealing with it?
You see, international relations, relations between the employers and employer.
Right.
And where we have the government as the employer, then the government also has a Fair Wages and Salaries Commission as the agency that negotiates on behalf of the government. So when they negotiate and they reach agreement, the agreement should be complied with. And if that is done, I think the workers will not be annoyed. You see, the fact is that nobody gets, or no employer gets what he or she wants. The unions may want something, and when they are not getting that, they would need to get what we call a compromise. And when they get a compromise, they will be happy with it.
And what form does these compromises that you're referring to? What form do they come? I mean,
you see, it comes through negotiations, because if they go strictly in accordance with the Labor Act 203, then what it means is that the union, on behalf of the workers, would negotiate with government, who will be represented by the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. And when they discuss, that is what we call negotiation. When they discuss and they reach an agreement, then the employer should comply with what they have agreed with. But what is happening now is that they reach agreement and they find it difficult, the employer finds it difficult to comply with the agreement reached.
But in a situation where, like I mentioned, all these issues that we see on the labor front seem to be alike, what to you could be at the core of all this?
What it is, to me, I think is as a result of lack of funds to pay what they agree upon. But I feel that if the government, through the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission, would even negotiate payments in parts, that is, installments, the employees, that is the workers, would agree. But when that is arrived at, and they fail to comply with the agreement, for example, the first installment is not done, the second installment is not done, then they would go on strike.
But in a situation where the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission may not be necessarily needed, and I'm talking in this case the Black Stars of Ghana, who are currently in Brazil, and the fact that they are complaining over some unpaid allowances, and they are saying that, look, pay us before we can go on the training and then we can get ready for the game with Portugal. In a case where we don't have the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission playing the middle role and some promises have been made, what should be the procedure government should use in ensuring that there's no form of agitation?
You see, in this case, they are not employer-employee relationships.
Right.
It's an agreement reached between two parties, that is the Black Star players and the government. I don't know who represents the government though, but I think the Ministry of Sports would be in charge of the negotiation. And if they negotiate, that means they would have reached some agreement. And if you reach an agreement, you have to comply with the agreement reached. And that is what I think is worrying the country now. Because, you see, all agreements reached, if the employer, be it government or the private sector, agree to pay on scheduled times, no employee or no union would say that they wouldn't agree. They would agree. But when it comes the time of payment and you fail to pay, then you put the workers or the employees in a very bad situation. For example, the unions in the case, when the unions negotiate on behalf of the rank and file workers, and so they would permit the workers that, no, we are going to get this, and that the employer through our employer has agreed to pay us by this installment. And when that comes and they don't do, that means that the rank and file may think that the leaders have gone for some compromise, which they would think that have not been fair to them. You see, so then at times there will be a problem with even between the workers and their union. The workers may not believe the union, and at times the workers may go on strike or do something without even the knowledge or within the approval of the union leaders.
Well, a couple of moments ago, you related the various agitations that we're experiencing on the labor front to the economic situation in the country. Now, with pressure piling on government, how do you manage expectations? How do you manage the situation to ensure that there's calm on the labor front?
I think, you see, all problems are solved through negotiation. And I think the government should get very good negotiators, and the workers should get very good negotiators. And when they are negotiating and they put every card on the table, then they will know that this is what they are going to get. You see, if they know that they are going to get A, and they don't get that, that's what brings problem. Because they say that, and you have agreed to that. So if you have agreed to that, then pay. You see, so my problem is with the employers, not only government, all employers, when they promise or when they reach a compromise, that's the agreement. They should comply with the agreement. And if they do that, everything will be peaceful in the country.
Very well. I'm going to have to thank you very much, Opanyi Obinfosu. He's a labor expert speaking to us here on today's big story. Shortly, we'll be joined by Dr. Edward Brenya. He's a political scientist with more perspective into this. He's a political scientist. And also another political scientist from the University of Ghana, Dr. Opoku Edu, would also join us. And we'll look at it from the political perspective. Exactly how should government deal with the situation? And like I mentioned, it looks like all these issues are interrelated. What for them could be the core reasons? And then, is it simply a case of the economy being in distress, or management of expectations has not been truly well by way of the current administration? We'll be looking at that particular issue when we are joined on the phone line shortly by Dr. Opoku Edu, political scientist with the University of Ghana, and also Dr. Edward Brenya. He would also join us on the phone lines with details to this. But let me just inform you that we've been looking at the various pressure that seemed to be mounting on the Mahama administration, especially on the labor front. Far away Brazil, we're hearing that the Black Stars of Ghana are not excited about the fact that some allowances due them have not been paid. Here in Ghana, we know of the fact that nurses and midwives are threatening to go on strike. We also know of UNICOF, those in the financial sector. They are also threatening to go on strike over issues related to VAT on financial services in the country. Potax issue remain unresolved. For that matter, they remain on strike. So how can government deal with this? Has it got to do with the fact that promises have been made and they've not been delivered? Have expectations been risen so high, been lifted so high that government has not been able to manage it? Exactly what are the political dynamics to this particular situation Ghana finds itself in? Shortly, we'll be getting on the phone lines Dr. Edward Brenya, who will give his perspective to this particular matter. And of course, Dr. Opoku Edu, he is with the University of Ghana, political science lecturer there. He would also join us on the line. Now, I'm told that Dr. Edward Brenya is already on the line. Good evening to you, Dr. Edward Brenya, and thanks for joining us on today's big story.
Oh, good evening, and you're welcome.
Now, like we discussed, all the issues seem interrelated, from the Black Stars of Ghana, the agitation in camp over unpaid allowances, to chiefs in the Volta region saying that promises have not been fulfilled, and for that matter, they are likely to go on a demonstration, through to a threat of a strike action by nurses and midwives in the country, Potax strike action. What is simply happening? Do you have an antidote to this?
Well, I think, of course, it is very problematic if workers, or for that matter, footballers, are being promised something and they don't get it. And more importantly, when there is this fear that if we don't resort to one form of strike action that we might not get it, as is happening with the Black Stars. But more importantly, what needs to be looked at critically is the economy, the state of the economy. Why is it that people are worried? Why is it that there's been a couple of promises, but those promises have not been fulfilled? Of course, we know that the Ghanaian economy is struggling at this time. We know that the government had taken pragmatic policies to address the struggling economy. But the problem is that you don't actually see the expansion. There is no accountability. There is no, what do you put it, measures, printed measures to ensure that those policies that are introduced actually. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you. Go on ahead.
Yes.
So you're
Yes.
basically saying that there are no measures. But, I mean, again, we go back to the issues. They are interrelated. What for you is at the core of all this?
I think at the core of all this, I'm sorry?
I was saying that what for you is at the core of all this? These issues that I've spelled out to you.
That is why I'm saying that at the root of all this is the fact that we have a struggling economy. We have politicians who are making promises but do not show any clear sign of fulfilling the promises. We have people who feel that they are being denied the right to what is due them, and politicians who are promising that we should sacrifice, but they themselves don't sacrifice. When it came to the issue of the parliamentarians, their salaries, we all saw what happened. We have politicians who are telling us that the economy is struggling, but yet they are driving in the most expensive cars in Ghana. So when all this is happening, then it becomes very difficult for you to tell someone to sacrifice when indeed you are not sacrificing. All
right, Dr. Brenya, hold on there. Let me bring in Dr. Opoku Edu. He's also with the University of Ghana. He's a political science lecturer there. Dr. Edu, thank you very much for joining us on today's big story.
Yeah, thank you.
And you as well. What for you is the core of all these issues that we're talking about? I mean, the fact that there's pressure on government, on the labor front, and of course, if you go to the Volta region right now, there are some chiefs and some people there who are saying that government has failed to honor its promise of fixing their roads, and for that matter, they are likely to go on a demonstration. This week alone has not been too good for the Mahama administration. Dr. Brenya thinks the situation with the economy is at the core of all this. What's your view?
Yeah, thank you. I think that the first speaker is right. First and foremost, the economy is in some kind of crisis, and therefore it becomes very difficult to meet the competing demand.
Government says the economy is not in crisis, it's rather challenged.
Well, I mean, what's a crisis, you know, and because if you look at the levels of inflation, the levels of joblessness and all that, it's at a point where it's clearly unsustainable. And so you reach a crisis level when the problems you have almost defy solutions. And so that's what I think. But I don't expect the government to admit openly that it's in crisis. But if things continue the way they are, pretty soon they'll be forced to, do so. But the major problem is the well-known, traditional big man clientelism. The president goes to any place because he's the number one man in this country, he's a big man, and then, the clientelist politics, he makes, promises. So he goes about all over the country distributing, as it were, promises, which he is unable to fulfill. Not because he doesn't want to, but because he can't, simply can't. The economy is not growing to the extent that he can. And so the problem is partly self-inflicted and partly to do with an economy that is facing very serious downturn.
Okay. Now, Dr. Brenya, bringing you in, don't you think that these promises perhaps are not being managed and the expectations that come with it are not being managed because the expectations is quite high and people are expecting the government to deliver, but the space or the interval between developing one particular part of the country to the other is quite short, and we're not just giving government breathing space. I mean, that's the point I want to raise there.
Yeah, I think you were right in that, but more importantly, to support the idea that the other speaker talked about, is the fact that the president, the first man of the country, need to be frantic with Ghanaians and tell them the real situation. I think most of the time politicians think about their political capital, and therefore, in a way to achieve their political capital, promises are given in a way that even when they are not fulfilled, we keep on giving promises. So yes, the resources are not there. We are suffering. I mean, the Ghanaian economy needs policies that need to be adopted so that we can move on. The government has tried on several occasions to adopt policies, and I want to talk about the policies that was the VAT that was introduced in the financial sector. The unfortunate thing that happened, that was a very good policy. Some of the policies that we need to adopt at this time. The only problem that our economy are suffering is because we don't adopt, we are not good with taxation. But if you realize how this whole thing was done about, we allowed the media to define the policy even before the IRS came in to defend it. People were polluted in all kinds of ways before the IRS is now trying to reverse it. And people are also doubting if at the end of the day the government would not go back to some of the things that people have speculated. And all this thing does not augur well for a country like Ghana. We need to be very frank. We need to be very pragmatic in the policies that we adopt. And more importantly, we need to be upfront with the people to tell them really what is going on. It looks as if politicians are not being truthful to Ghanaians.
Let me give you an example. Let me give you an example of how difficult that particular point is. I mean, where you said there's a need for government to be upfront with the reality on the ground. Now, in the Voto region, for instance, where the president inspected some roads, and he mentioned that, look, the CDB loan is the main reason why we're unable to fix the road. I mean, reasons were given. The chiefs and the people are still bent on going on a demonstration despite this reason that's been given by the president. So how easy then does it become for the government to manage the situation?
It's a different thing when you're telling the people that we are facing a problem. This is an area that I'm deeply concerned about. We are facing a problem. We are going to fix it. Giving them an idea, and earlier on I made mention of some factors. I'm coming to you. I'm trying to be frank with you, telling you that you should make sacrifices. But the way I come to you, the cars that I'm driving, where ministers are using money, the way party functionaries are using money, are saying something else. It becomes very difficult for the people to accept what I'm saying. But if really the sacrifices is starting from the executive, from the president, and the president goes down, speak to them and tell them that, look, I'm looking out for this loan. When this loan is available, we are going to take it. We are not 100% sure that we are going to have the money. And as soon as we have the money, you need to be trust. When you tell the people one thing and another time the money comes and they see that you are doing a different thing, then the people are not going to believe when you're trying to be frank with them. So I think there is a history of people being promised and not getting that at the end of the term of the president.
Okay.
This is all playing to why people don't want to believe it and why people think that elections should be the means of sharing the national cake, which is a problem for the government right now.
Very well. Let me bring in Dr. Opoku-Edu. Do you share the same view that perhaps the posturing of government could be one of the main reasons why people will not want to give government breathing space in terms of the promises it gives?
Can I come again?
I was saying that, would you agree with Dr. Brenya when he makes the point that, look, the posturing, I mean, the way government carries itself, the way government appointees carries themselves, could be one of the reasons why they are not giving breathing space when they make promises?
Well, I think that is certainly part of their explanation. But I think on a more basic and fundamental level, the problem is to do with the fact that this government in particular has tended to proceed ad hoc, which has meant the absence of a long-term planning perspective. And in that kind of situation, you see the government making promises here and there all over the country and so on. And so we seem to be caught, or we seem to be embarking on a journey without a map to an uncertain destination. you know, and until that clear vision, that clear transformative agenda, which clearly we require at this time in our history, is put in place, things will continue to go the way they are. Now, the economy is in very difficult situation. There's a crisis of accumulation. Businesses are folding up. The jobless people, the numbers are increasing, and so on. Now, the city is facing very serious, challenges from the other currencies, and we are seeming to be caught in an inflationary spiral. In the face of all this, there are no clear, redemptive initiatives on the horizon, and so we find ourselves in a mess. Now, if in the face of all this, government, ministers, and so on carry themselves in a way that portray that they are living well and so on. At the moment, I understand that many of the ministers are in Brazil watching football when there are very serious problems with the economy and human rights. Some chiefs have been murdered and so on and so forth. So it becomes, therefore, very difficult for the people's energies and commitment to be available, for the people to understand the government, for the people to, tighten their belts. And so it is part a problem that has been created by the government. But as I said, basically, it is the fact that the economy is not growing, the fact that there are no redemptive initiatives on the horizon, so that the future looks quite big. And very soon, as I indicated, the government is going to have to, admit that we are in a crisis. Okay. So I agree with the speaker. I agree with him about the point, with respect to the way ministers and government appointees, have been conducting themselves. Very, very well. Briefly, let's just advance the point a little further. I'll come to you, Dr. Barima. For you, one, how do you think, or what particular mechanism should government employ in managing expectations? And two, where do we draw the line between promises and assurance to the people? Dr. Barima.
Is that to me?
Yes, to you.
Okay. Yes. Before I even talk about this, I want us to look at this in a broad perspective. I think it is important, and this is to every African government, the fact that we need to take steps to be self-reliant. There has been too much over-dependence on our foreign partners. And that is why the president could go to the water region and say, well, I'm not doing this because this money is not coming. If we know it is coming from our coffers, if we are managing the little that we have very well, then we can make a promise that can be fulfilled. And if somebody promises something and you are making a promise based on what someone has promised you, you are not very sure and you are not certain that the promise can be fulfilled. Okay, so quickly, and as politicians, you would want people to at least have something that will boost your political capital. On the front, way forward to managing expectations, I think the Ghanaian voter, expectations are high. And most of them is coming because the promises that are made during the period of campaign. We tell people all kind of things, all kind of promises. And then when we get to government, we come and realize that most of the things that we have promised, but the criticism that is leveled against the government, while the government is in power, are not things that we can fulfill. So I think at this point, we need to have a national policy agenda that all political parties will be fighting towards, that all political parties will be, making steps to improve. Yes, we're going to have differences in manifestos, but if the manifestos are geared towards one national agenda, then of course we will not have a big problem of promising one thing when we cannot do it. Because at the end of the day, if I promise it and I'm not able to fulfill it, the other government comes in and that government might, if that is the agenda, complete that. Very well. But it is because we feel that we have 4 years. Within those 4 years, we have to build a political capital, and we do everything possible, sometimes including the policies of deceit. Sometimes those promises are promises, they are only symbolic. Very well. We know very well that they are not promises that we can fulfill. Very well. I'm going to have to... But we make them anyway for political capital. I'll let you end here. This discussion certainly will go on. Thank you very much, Dr. Barima. Dr. Edu, finally, your point on this, quickly.
Well, I think that I share the opinion because we need a long-term planning perspective. We need a transformative agenda. And the kind of vision which we need must be one that can capture the imagination of the Ghanaian. In other words, it should be one on which all of us can reach some consensus and implement. At the moment, my suggestion would be that the economy will have to be put in some kind of an intensive care because things are really, really bad.
Very well. Thank you very much, Dr. Opoku-Edu, for talking to us here on today's big story. We just spoke to Dr. Opoku-Edu and, of course, Dr. Edward Bringer. They are both political scientists speaking to us on today's big story. That'll be it. When we come back, Marian Ture will be here with the interactive segment. Stay tuned.